So the next one is about the standard voltage in America. The standard voltage in America is about 120 voltage, and the Hertz is about the frequency of the AC. That's about 60 Hertz. These two numbers you should remember because that's it on the test too. The question: what is the standard voltage in America? We know that the standard voltage of America in the real question is about 8. So today I will talk about insulators. So on the ASVAB test, they will ask which one is the highest insulator, and we have mica is the first one. Then that's it, the class is about the second. Telephone, paper, rubber, transformer oil, paraffin wax, porcelain, air, and vacuum, and that's it, the last one. That's it, the most. So that's the material you need to memorize, because in the ASVAB test they will ask which insulator is the highest, and we know that maybe they just choose only 4 material classes: paper, rubber, and paraffin wax. So you choose the classes. And sometimes they ask about what's the least insulator in this type of the material. So that you need to memorize the order of the material with the insulators. So in the real ASVAB test, what is the highest insulators? We have A, B, C, D. So the answer for this question is about A, because we just see about the length of the insulator, and I just show on the reverse video. So as we talk about resistance of wire, we have the formula R equal to resistivity multiplied with the length divided by S. This is about the area. We have resistivity. This is about the length of wire. This one is about the area of cross section. So I will explain what's the S and what's the L. So in here we have the wire in here. This area is about the cross section of the wire, and to find the area of the cross section, we just use R pi. R is about the radius, pi is about the pi is 3.14, and we calculate about the area of the cross section of the wire. L is about the length. That's the L. And we need to learn about this formula because this is on ASVAB test. The next one is about the conductivity. I will show for you. We know that on the previous video we learned about conductivity. So the silver in here is higher than the copper, higher than gold, and higher than aluminum. So because the silver is highest conductivity, it means the lowest resistivity. So we have letter B is higher than gold. So that's the P in here. If we don't change the L and the S, we just change about the P, because the silver is high conductivity. This means that they have a low resistivity. So that you need to remember this formula, two formula, and that they will be on the test. We have the real question on ASVAB. If the length of wire increase 2 times and the radius decrease 2 times, what will happen with the resistance of wire? We have A, B, C, D. To do this question like this, we just use the formula. Here, that's the basic formula in here. So right now, the wire increase 2 times. We have the wire in here. So this is 2 times right now, and the radius decrease 2 times. But the area of the wire is about R power 2 divided by R power 2 multiplied with pi. But right now they decrease 2 times. So the new one is PR divided by 2. In here, we have the number 2 and we have power 2. So this is about P multiplied with 2 LS. And we have 1 over 2, power 2 is P 1 power 4. In this ratio like this, number 4 will go to here, because we just numerator divide to denominator, so number 4 will be on the numerator. Therefore, the areas right now should be 8 times. So that they will increase 8 times for the new resistance. So the answer for this question is about P. Talk about inductor and capacitor. Inductor, we have the symbol like this, and capacitor, they will have the symbol like this. On the ASVAB, they will ask about what is the difference between inductor and capacitor. Inductor, they can create about electromagnetic. Moreover, when the electron go through the wire, they still create the electromagnetic surrounding the wire, and that's about important for the test. This one capacitor they use for the store the energy, because when they go through the capacitor, they still store the energy inside the capacitor. The next one is about resistance. We have the formula resistance for inductor and capacitor. Let's see about omega. In the omega, we have 2 pi f. F is about the frequency. So because we can apply omega in this formula, so we can say 2 pi f L similar to C, 2 pi f C. So to create about the resistance of the inductor and capacitor, we will use only AC. That's about alternating current. And we need to learn about the difference between inductor and capacitor, because that's on the ASVAB test. Now let's see about AC and DC. So I will talk which one will be blocked between the IC and DC if they go through inductor and capacitor. So in the inductor, we have this symbol and we have the formula of the resistance. In the IC, we have the frequency. On the DC, there is no frequency. So in this formula from the IC with the frequency in here, this one will be the locked. This one will go through. Because on the IC, if we apply this formula, we can create the resistance of the inductor. If we use DC, the electron just go through on the wire, and because on the DC we have Hertz is 0. So when we apply Hertz 0 in this formula, so the resistance in inductor will become 0. But I say apply to the frequency, they can create the resistance on the inductor. So that's the important. The next one is about capacitor. On SC, on the AC and DC, similar to AC, we have the frequency. On the capacitor, there's still the frequency, and this one is still locked, but the power will go through. But they say they don't have the frequency, so they have to lock it. The reason is that if the DC don't have the frequency, this one will become 1 divided by 0. We know that the limit of 1 divided by 0 is equal to positive infinity. This means that SC will be positive infinity, and this means that they have the highest resistance. This about IC, they have the frequency, but if we apply it here, they still have the resistance, but the electron they still go through on the capacitor. That's why we use the IC to store the energy in here, because they can go through on the capacitor, on the two sides of the capacitor. That's why sometimes it will be like this. Then later I see they change the current become the new one. That's why the capacitor they can store the energy. However, this say they have one way, but we apply the formula of the resistance of capacitor, and because they don't have the frequency, so the denominator becomes 0, and we got about 1 divided by 0, and we know limit of 1 divided by 0 to become positive infinity, because numerator is the number 1 higher than 0, and 0, that's why we have the positive infinity. Because we have positive infinity, resistance of the capacitor it become positive infinity, and that's why we have the high resistance on the capacitor. Our real ASVAB. What is true about logic of inductor? We have A, B, C, D. So because we have inductor in here, we know that DC can go through the inductor because they don't have the resistance for the DC, but the AC they create the logic. Let's say 2 by FM. So to answer the question, we can choose A because DC they don't create the frequency, but in the inductor they become the zero. But AC will be the logic because they create the resistance. So today I will talk about the radio and radar. And you know that if we have only if they have only capacitor and inductor, they will create about the radio frequency. This one will be on the test, and we know that if we use the C and L, and in the C they store the energy so that they can create the flow of current go many times, and we have the formula to this radio is about T is about the period, and we can transform the formula for frequency. We have T equal to 1 divided by F, so that the frequency of the radio should be about 1 divided to be multiplied with LC. This formula is so important for the radio frequency, and this will be on the ASVAB test. The next one I will talk about the radio and radar frequency. You need to memorize the number. AM radio from 530 to 1700 kilohertz. FM radio we have from 88 to 108 megahertz. Radar we have 5 megahertz to 130 gigahertz. Sometimes they will become on the test they write about 130,000 megahertz. So that's the frequency we need to remember because that's it on the test. What is the range of AM radio? We have A, B, C, D. In here we know that AM radio should be about kilohertz. In here we have megahertz. This is wrong, so we don't choose C. And we know that AM radio should be more than 1,700. That's it, the maximum. But in the question number D, they just 150. That's it, wrong. The next one, the lowest AM radio is about 550, but the answer A is 1,000. That is wrong. So the answer for this question is about B. About the diode, we know the symbol like this. So in this symbol, the purpose of the diode is that the flow of electrons just go one way, they cannot return back, because the diode just like the regulate the flow of electrons, they cannot return back to the flow, so they just go through one way. That's it, the purpose of the diode. So the next one is about transistor. So on the ASVAB test, they will ask what is the purpose of the transistor, what is the how many units on the transistor, how many types of the transistor. So I will explain for you. About the purpose of the transistor, they control the flow of the electricity because they have 3 terminals. They control it here. If they turn off, the flow will go over there or may go over there. So they control the flow of electricity. The next one we need to remember that because we have 3 terminals, we need to remember emitter, collector, and the base. Emitter, they should have in next to the flow of the electron. It means that if you see about the triangle in here, it should be the emitter, and the last one is the collector. The base should be in near the long triangle. So you must know about emitter, collector, and the base. The next one we know that transistor only 2 types there are 2 types of transistor. That's about PNP and NPN. P stands for positive and N stands for negative. So on the ASVAB, they just care about what's the purpose of transistor. So what's the location of transistor? For example, they put A, B, C, and they ask what's the emitter, what's the collector, what's the base. And the last one, how many types of the transistor we have, PNP and NPN. So on the real ASVAB, they ask what is the type of transistor. We know that we learn about transistor, so we choose as this because PNP and NPN. The next question, what is the structure of the transistor? We know that there are 3 structures in the transistor. That's the base, emitter, and collector. So this is correct. The next one, I will talk about the transformer. The transformer, they just train about the voltage. For example, we transform to the high voltage to the low voltage. This is used for AC. And we have the formula of transformer. The formula of the transformer is about the primary winding divided to the secondary winding. This is total turning coil. This is about the voltage. Voltage primary divided to voltage secondary. I will show you for you. So this is about primary. This is about secondary. So in here, we can see that the turning of the primary is higher than the turning of secondary. So the voltage of the primary is higher than the secondary. So that we have the ratio in here. This one will be on test, and we need to learn about this. In here, we have the current. The current in here is IS divided IP. Why we need to switch like this? Because the power primary equals the power in the secondary. This means that the total power before and the total power after that in the transformer, they are same. But in the letter P, we have IP multiplied with VP equal to IS multiplied with VS. Therefore, when we put about the ratio, VB divided by VS, so that's IS on the top one, IB moved to the denominator. That's why we have the formula like this. And this is on the important for the ASVAB test. On the real ASVAB, what is the secondary voltage if VB is 200 voltage, NP is 1000 turns, and NS is 500 turns. So we have VB divided by VS equal to NP divided by NS. So that we have the formula in here, and we have they ask about VS in here, so that VS equal to VP multiplied with NS divided by NP. So that we just input the number in here. So we have 200. We multiply with the NS is 500. Divide by 1000. 200 multiplied with 500 is about 100,000. Then divide 1000. We got about 100 voltage. So the answer for this question is about A. Here is the color of the wire. You must remember all of them because it's on the test. Here is a color of capacitor, inductor, and resistor. You must remember the number and the color. So on the ASVAB they ask, what is the color of grounding wire? So after we study, we know that this is green. The next question, what is the color of hot wire? If we study about that, we choose A is the hot wire. So, what is the color of resistor? Number 2. If we study about the color of resistor, and we learn that is D. So in the real ASVAB, they just ask like this.